Everybody, welcome back. It's time for another deep dive, and you know me, I love a good parenting book.
Always up for a little self-improvement.
Exactly. So today we're cracking open Melinda Wenner Moyer's How to Raise Kids Who Aren't Assholes.
Catchy title, right?
It definitely grabs your attention, and honestly, I think it speaks to like a universal fear among parents, right?
Oh, I mean, nobody wants to raise a jerk.
It's like we're all out here trying to raise these tiny humans to be decent people, but it's tough.
It really is. There's so much pressure and so much conflicting advice. It's easy to feel lost.
Okay, so Moyer dives right into this in the book. Like, she gets it. You know, she starts by tackling this worry that a lot of us have. Well, teaching our kids to be kind, make them pushovers.
Yeah, like that's a real concern, right? We want them to be empathetic and compassionate, but we also don't want them to get walked all over.
Exactly. We want them to stand up for themselves, to be strong and resilient.
And I think that's where Moyer's research is so interesting because she actually says that kindness is linked to greater popularity and long-term success.
So, like, being nice isn't just some moral high ground. It actually leads to good outcomes.
It seems so counterintuitive, right? But the research really does back it up.
That's fascinating. Okay, so how do we do it? How do we raise these, like, little bundles of kindness who also know how to hold their own in the world?
Well, Moyer offers a bunch of strategies, but one of the things that really stood out to me was the importance of talking about feelings.
Feelings, huh?
Yeah, not just telling kids, like, don't do that,
Yeah.
but actually connecting their actions to the feelings they cause in others.
So, like, instead of yelling no hitting when my son whacks his little sister, I should say something like, hitting hurts, look how sad she is now. How do you think that makes her feel?
Exactly. You're weaving emotional language into the discipline. You're helping him understand the impact of his actions on someone else.
Okay, that makes sense. And this isn't just for like big blowups, right? You can do this in everyday situations.
Absolutely. It's about making those connections constantly. Like, I'm feeling stressed because the house is a mess. Can you help me by picking up your toys?
Oh, I like that, appealing to their helpful nature instead of just barking orders.
Right. And it ties into another point Moyer makes about chores, which is that chores, particularly those that involve directly helping others, can actually build compassion.
I have to admit, I sometimes fall into the trap of just doing things myself, you know? Like, it's faster to just empty the dishwasher than to wait for my kids to do it.
Oh, I totally get it. We've all been there. But the research is pretty compelling. The more kids help out around the house, especially in ways that benefit others, the more empathetic they become.
Okay, that's a good point. It reframes the whole chore war, doesn't it? Instead of this, like, power struggle, it's an opportunity for them to practice being good humans.
Exactly. It's about contributing to the family and learning to care for others.
All right, so this next bit I'm a little skeptical about. Moyer suggests we create house rules together with our kids.
I know it sounds kind of crazy, right?
Right.
Like giving those little dictators more power.
Exactly. But her reasoning is that it creates this sense of shared ownership. Like, we're all in this together, not just me imposing my will upon them.
Right? It's about building a mini society where everyone has a voice and everyone understands why the rules exist.
Okay. I can see the appeal of that in theory, but in practice, won't that just lead to endless negotiations like every time they want to stay up late or eat candy for dinner?
Well, here's where it gets really interesting. Moyer says this approach also means they can hold you accountable.
Wait, what?
Yeah, like if you're always going on about respect being a family rule and then you like lose your temper or something, they can call you out on it.
Oh, so it's a two-way street, not just me laying down the law.
Exactly. It's about mutual respect and accountability, which honestly is a pretty powerful lesson in itself.
Okay. I can get on board with that. It actually ties into another point Moyer makes, which is the importance of parents modeling kindness, right? Like, we can't just talk the talk. We got to walk the walk.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
She says it's not enough to just be nice. We need to actually highlight those good deeds. Let our kids know why we're helping a neighbor or picking up trash on the street.
So we're showing them that kindness is a deliberate choice, not just something you do when it's convenient.
Exactly. We're being intentional about it and we're making it visible so they can learn from our example.
I love that idea. Okay, so far, we've got talking about feelings, doing chores together, creating house rules, modeling kindness. It's like we're building this foundation of empathy, right?
You got it. It's about nurturing that ability to understand and share the feelings of others.
Which is crucial for, well, not being an asshole.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But Moyer also reminds us that kids are still developing. Their empathy muscles are still growing.
Right. They don't just magically pop out of the womb knowing how to be kind and compassionate.
She actually shares this story about a little girl named Ella who seemed totally indifferent when her great-grandmother died.
Oh, yeah. I remember reading that. I was like, wow, that kid is cold.
But Moyer explains that young kids often lack what's called theory of mind.
Theory of mind.
It's basically the ability to understand that other people have their own thoughts and feelings that are different from your own.
So, like, little kids are kind of egocentric. They see the world through their own lens.
Exactly. And they haven't fully developed that capacity to step into someone else's shoes and understand their perspective.
So in Ella's case, it wasn't that she was intentionally being heartless. She just didn't have the mental tools to grasp the situation's emotional weight.
Right. It was a developmental stage, not a character flaw.
Okay, that makes me feel a lot better because I know my kids can seem clueless at times.
We've all been there.
Yeah.
But this is why understanding child development is so important. It helps us react with empathy and guidance instead of just judgment.
This is great. It feels like we're laying a solid foundation before we move on to the next big chunk of Moyer's book.
Oh, there's so much more to unpack. I'm excited to dive in.
Me too. Let's do it.
So next up, we're going to tackle motivation and grit.
Ooh, that's a good one.
It is, right? Like, how do
Wow.
we raise kids who are driven and resilient, who don't give up easily?
Especially in a world that's full of distractions and instant gratification.
Right. It's like everywhere you look, there's this message that success should be easy and effortless.
Oh, yeah, totally. Like we celebrate those natural talents, the kids who just seem to excel without even trying.
Exactly. And Moyer really challenges that whole notion. She says research actually shows that effort, motivation, and grit are far stronger predictors of long-term success than just raw talent alone.
So, like, the kid who practices for hours, even if they're not naturally gifted, could end up surpassing the prodigy who just coasts on talent.
Precisely. It's about putting in the work, the dedication, the perseverance. Those are the qualities that really matter in the long run.
That's actually pretty encouraging, you know? Like, it means we can help our kids cultivate those qualities.
Absolutely. And it starts with how we praise them.
Praise.
Yeah. Moyer says that overpraising intelligence can actually backfire.
Really? Yo, instead of gushing, you're so smart, every time they get an A, we should be focusing on their effort.
Exactly. Imagine saying something like, I'm so impressed with how you stuck with that math problem. Even when it got tough, your hard work really paid off.
Okay, I see the difference there. You're acknowledging the process, not just the outcome.
Right. And you're sending the message that effort is valuable, that it's something to be proud of.
Which in turn encourages them to keep trying even when things get tough.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It builds that resilience, that grit that we're talking about.
Oh, yeah, this is making a lot of sense. Now, what about procrastination, though? That's a beast I battle with myself, let alone trying to help my kids with it.
Oh, I hear you. Procrastination's a tricky one. But Moyer has some interesting insights on that, too.
Oh, do tell.
Well, she suggests that procrastination isn't always about laziness. Sometimes it's fueled by negative emotions like fear of failure or feeling overwhelmed.
So before I go on a lecture about time management, I should maybe check in with my daughter and see if she's actually anxious about the project rather than just being lazy.
Exactly. Validating their feelings can make a huge difference.
Okay, that's a good point. I'd much rather address the root cause than just treat the symptom.
And once you've addressed those underlying emotions, you can start working together on practical strategies, like breaking down the task into smaller chunks, creating a schedule, and minimizing distractions.
Right, because sometimes those big, overwhelming tasks can feel paralyzing.
Exactly. It's about making it feel manageable and giving them the tools to succeed.
Okay, so we've talked about effort, praise, procrastination. Now, what about motivation in general? I'm a sucker for using rewards to get my kids moving. Is that bad?
Well, rewards can be effective in the short term, but Moyer cautions against relying on them too heavily
Why is that?
because it can actually undermine their intrinsic motivation. You want them to do things because they find them enjoyable or valuable, not just for the prize at the end.
Okay, I see the problem there, but how do you cultivate that intrinsic motivation? It's not like I can just flip a switch.
It takes time and effort, but it starts with giving them choices, exposing them to a variety of activities, and letting them discover what they're passionate about.
So, like, instead of forcing my son to take piano lessons, I should let him explore different instruments and see what sparks his interest.
Exactly. And then once he's found something he enjoys, you can support his exploration and encourage his growth.
And focus on the joy of learning, not just the end goal.
Precisely. It's about fostering a love of learning for its own sake.
Okay, this is all making a lot of sense, but it's definitely a shift in perspective, you know? Like, I'm so used to focusing on achievements and outcomes.
It's a common trap we all fall into, but Moyer reminds us that the journey is just as important as the destination.
Right, it's about the skills they develop, the lessons they learn, the resilience they build along the way.
Exactly. And those qualities will serve them well no matter what path they choose in life.
Speaking of paths and perceptions, Moyer shared this study that really stuck with me. It found that people tend to judge those who are naturally talented as being more skilled, even when their work is identical to someone who had to work hard to get there.
Isn't that fascinating? It shows how deeply ingrained those biases are. We automatically assume that natural talent equals greater ability.
Even the evidence doesn't support it. It's kind of scary, actually.
It is. It makes you realize how much our perceptions can be skewed by these unconscious biases.
And how important it is to be mindful of the messages we're sending our kids.
Absolutely. We need to be celebrating effort and perseverance, not just natural ability.
Because hard work and dedication can take you further than talent alone.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
All right, so let's talk about bullying now. This is one of those topics that can feel really heavy.
It is right. Like, it's every parent's nightmare to think of their child being bullied or even being the bully.
Exactly, and Moyer really gets into the complexities of it in this book. She starts by pointing out something that I think a lot of parents might not want to hear.
Oh, what's that?
She says that many parents underestimate the possibility of their own child being the bully.
Oof, yeah, that's a tough one to swallow.
Right, like we all want to believe that our kids are the good guys.
But she backs it up with research. She cites studies showing that a significant number of kids admit to bullying behavior while their parents are completely unaware.
It's like a classic blind spot. We see our own kids through these rose-colored glasses.
Exactly, and that's why Moyer stresses the importance of open communication. Like, we need to be having honest conversations with our kids about bullying, what it looks like, how it makes people feel.
And not just assuming that our precious little angels could never be the ones doing the bullying.
Right, because sometimes it's not so obvious, like it's not always physical shoving or name calling.
Especially with cyberbullying.
Right.
Right, it's a whole other world online.
Exactly. And Moyer points out that cyberbullying often stems from the same root causes as traditional bullying, like insecurity, social status, power dynamics.
So it's not just about the medium, it's about the underlying issues.
Right, and that's why she emphasizes the importance of addressing those issues head on.
So what does that look like in practice?
Well, Moyer advocates for what's called authoritative parenting.
Okay, remind me what that is again.
It's basically about finding that sweet spot between being too permissive and too authoritarian.
So like setting clear boundaries, but also being warm and supportive.
Exactly. It's about being present and engaged with your kids, fostering open communication, and creating a safe space for them to express their feelings.
Okay, that makes sense. But what about when our kids witness bullying? I always tell mine to stay out of it, like don't get involved.
I used to say the same thing, but Moyer actually suggests that doing nothing can make it worse.
Really?
Yeah, she encourages us to teach our kids to be active bystanders.
Active bystanders.
So instead of just standing by and watching, they can intervene in some way.
Like what? Reporting it to an adult.
That's one option.
Yeah.
But it could also be something as simple as standing up for the victim or calling out the bully's behavior.
So we're empowering them to take action even if it feels uncomfortable?
Exactly. Because silence often sends the message that bullying is okay.
And that's definitely not the message we want to send.
Right? We need to teach our kids that they have a voice and that they can use it to stand up for what's right.
Okay, I'm totally on board with that. Now, what about sexism? That feels like another minefield for parents these days.
It is, and Moyer doesn't shy away from it. She really digs into the ways that sexism can manifest, even in subtle ways.
Like what?
Well, she starts by talking about those early gender stereotypes that we often impose on kids without even realizing it.
Oh, yeah, totally. Like assuming that boys will be better at math or that girls should be more nurturing.
Exactly. Those kinds of assumptions can have a lasting impact on kids. They can limit their opportunities and reinforce harmful gender roles.
So how do we combat that?
Moyer suggests starting with our language, like making a conscious effort to use gender-neutral terms whenever possible.
So instead of saying boys and girls, I should say kids.
Exactly. It's the small change, but it can make a difference.
And we need to be challenging those stereotypes whenever we see them.
Absolutely, like encouraging our kids to participate in activities that don't conform to traditional gender roles.
So like my son can take dance classes and my daughter can play football.
Exactly. And when we see instances of sexism in the media or in real life, we need to talk about it with our kids.
Not just brush it under the rug.
Right. We need to explain why it's wrong and help them develop a critical lens.
Okay, this is all really important stuff, but I think we need to shift gears a bit now and talk about something a little lighter.
Okay. What's on your mind?
Self-esteem.
Yeah.
Like, I think every parent wants their kid to feel good about themselves, to have confidence.
Of course, but Moyer cautions against confusing self-esteem with narcissism.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. There's definitely a difference between healthy confidence and being a self-centered jerk.
Exactly. And she says that overpraising kids can actually backfire.
Wait, really?
Yeah, like showering them with empty praise or putting them on a pedestal can lead to a sense of entitlement and a lack of resilience.
So how do we strike that balance? Like, how do we encourage healthy self-esteem without creating little narcissists?
Well, Moyer emphasizes the importance of unconditional love and acceptance.
Okay, that makes sense.
It's about letting your kids know that you love them for who they are, not just for their accomplishments.
So instead of saying, you're so smart, I should say something like, I'm so proud of how hard you worked on that project.
Exactly.
Uh,
You're praising their effort and their process, not just the outcome.
and it's important to let them struggle sometimes, right?
Absolutely. Moyer says that we need to resist the urge to overprotect our kids,
Like let them fall down and scrape their knees once in a while.
metaphorically and literally.
Yeah.
It's about giving them age-appropriate independence and the space to learn from their mistakes.
Okay, that makes sense. I think we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have, right? From kindness and bullying to sexism and self-esteem.
It's a lot to process, but I feel like I have a much better understanding of how to approach these challenges.
And remember, parenting is a journey, not a destination.
Right.
There's no one right way to do it.
Right. It's about being present, being open to learning, and being willing to adapt as our kids grow.
Exactly. And most importantly, it's about showing up for our kids with love and compassion.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks for diving deep with us today.
My pleasure. Always happy to talk about parenting.
And to all you listeners out there, keep up the good work. You've got this.